You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
Ex-NSA official reveals the real reason Trump doesn't care about public opinion, based on an article by Matthew Ross. Trump's midterm plan is not persuasion, it is interference. A former national security official and Common Cause both describe the same basic pattern. Trump is not behaving like a politician trying to win more voters. He is behaving like a president preparing the machinery to contest, disrupt, and delegitimize the vote if the outcome turns against him. The reported evidence ranges from claims about foreign interference and domestic fraud to threats around mail voting, ballot access, voter purges, gerrymandering, and even the use of ICE or military presence near polling places. That is the story. The political meaning is worse. The point is not popularity. Trump's apparent calculation is not that he can persuade the country. It is that he can survive losing by poisoning the process around the loss. That is why the source keeps circling back to election theft language, fraud theater, and manufactured threats instead of any serious effort to address affordability or governing. If the White House spends its time calling prices a Democratic hoax and floating security crackdowns at polling sites, the message is not confusion. It is preemption. This is not the posture of a leader who expects to be judged on results. It is the posture of someone trying to make the vote itself unstable enough that defeat can be converted into grievance, delay, or administrative sabotage. The real power is in the office. The central fact here is institutional power. Trump is not some outside agitator shouting into the void. He is the president. He has the Justice Department, the bully pulpit, and the ability to pressure agencies, echo chambers, and loyalists. The source names Todd Blanche, Kash Patel, and a DNI pick who will not say Trump lost in 2020. That matters because election sabotage is not just rhetoric when the people around the president are positioned to normalize it, amplify it, or carry it out. This is where the commentary in the source is strongest and where any soft framing fails. The danger is not polarization. The danger is an executive branch increasingly staffed by people willing to treat democratic legitimacy as optional if it serves the boss. The lie does the work. The fraud story is not a side issue. It is the mechanism. Trump's claim that the 2020 loss was stolen has already done its job. It trained supporters to accept a result only when he wins. George F. Will's recitation of the court record is useful here not because conservative validation magically makes the truth safer, but because it demonstrates how absurdly exhausted the lie already is. The courts did not find the hidden fraud myth. They found Trump's defeat. That matters because the next round does not need a fresh theory. It only needs enough confusion to justify intervention. Foreign interference, domestic fraud, ballot boxes seized, mail voting restricted, poll-in-place intimidation, post-election denial. These are not separate ideas. They are parts of one strategy for replacing counting with suspicion. ICE is not election security. The source mentions the prospect of ICE agents or military personnel around polling places. That should be named for what it is: state intimidation dressed up as security. ICE should be abolished, not repurposed as a domestic force for voter fear. The agency's role in this political imagination is obvious. It is not about safeguarding democracy. It is about making certain voters feel watched, vulnerable, and removable. That is the logic of authoritarian politics in a democracy's clothing. You do not need to cancel every ballot if you can make enough people believe participation carries a cost. You do not need to ban voting if you can turn the polling place into a site of risk. The targets are the rules, not the rival party. The Common Cause reporting sharpens the picture: mail voting restrictions, partisan gerrymanders, purges of eligible voters, voter ID demands, and attempts to drag the Postal Service into election administration. These are not random conservative policy ideas. They are tools for reducing the number of people who can meaningfully vote, then claiming the resulting landscape is proof of public will. Vicuña is right to note that some of these moves are illegal. But illegality is not a bug here. It is part of the test. Every overreach that goes unanswered teaches the presidency how far it can move before being stopped. Every challenge that drags on helps normalize the idea that democratic rules are negotiable if a sufficiently powerful actor wants them bent. The democratic response has to be structural. Rhodes is right about one thing: Democrats need decisive margins. But that is not a substitute for strategy. A big win helps, yet it does not solve the underlying problem that a president with loyalists in key agencies can still try to jam the process. The better lesson is simpler: treat election sabotage as an active governing project, not as a hypothetical concern. The source gestures toward the right instinct when it emphasizes state control of elections. That is where resistance has to happen, because the federal executive is not going to voluntarily limit itself. But the Democratic coalition should not confuse defensive administration with a whole task. The real work is building the capacity to expose, block, and punish every attempt to turn law enforcement, postal systems, and election machinery into instruments of partisan coercion. What this story really shows: this is not a story about one more Trump outrage. It is a story about how authoritarian politics operates in plain sight, not by hiding its intent, but by flooding the zone with fraud talk, bureaucratic pressure, and procedural abuse until the public is forced to argue over symptoms instead of power. The through line is simple: Trump wants to keep power by making democratic accountability harder to execute and easier to contest. The institutions around him are either willing to help or too timid to stop him. That is the pattern. The danger is not that he says the quiet part out loud. The danger is that he has already learned how much of the machinery will move once he does. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to Alternet for today's article, with the automated voice of Amy. Thanks for listening.